All right, now we're rolling. Again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So introduce yourself, your name and position, please.
My name is Dr. Eileen De Freece. I'm Associate Professor of Writing and Literature here at Essex County College.
Okay, so tell us about growing up in Newark. What was the city like when you were a child?
Well, I was born at St. Michael's Hospital, and my parents got married in the early 1950s, I think 1951, and they met actually at Central High School.
Wow, so has anything really changed since, like, now, before, like, in Central High School compared to now?
Oh, everything's changed. Actually, my father, Albert De Freece, was probably one of the first people of color to attend NJIT, that was known as the Newark College of Engineering at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So is there any experience or memory of Newark that you experienced as a child that you can share?
My most glaring memory is of the riots, the 1967 riots, also called today known as the Rebellion, the Newark Rebellion. Yes, we lived, my parents' first home that they bought was on number 633 South 15th Street.
So what was your memories during the Newark Rebellion, if you will? What do you remember most about the Newark Rebellion?
It was horrible. We were told that we had to stay inside. We couldn't even go out in our yard to play. There was shooting on our street. The one thing I remember is waking up with hearing a popping sound. And my dad jumped up, and we were all terrified. And we looked out the window, and it was the National Guard. For some reason, they were shooting at our house. I don't know if they were shooting at someone that was running from them, who was running. I don't know, but it was terrifying because it was a little girl, and we were all scared. Wow. And so we remembered that. And also there were bullet holes on the side of our house.
Wow, it sounds amazing. Like the history of Newark itself is just amazing because
yes.
There's so much about Newark that people don't really understand. Mm-hmm. So some people think that Robert Tree discovered Newark, but in fact the Lenape Nation had occupied this area for generations before. Tell us what was this area like when it was primarily Lenape living here?
Well, actually, I can give you an idea, okay? There were millions and millions of Native American people. I know you've heard of the Verrazano Bridge in New York.
Tell us more about that.
Well, it's named after a ship captain by the name of Verrazano. And when he came down in his diary, he wrote about coming down the Hudson River, and there being at night, he came at night, and there were so many Native Americans living along the banks of the Hudson that he didn't even have to light his ship because of the light. It was like a city. Well, he didn't say a city, but it was basically unbelievable. And it was first contact with the Native people at the time. That's how many people, Native Americans, lived along the Hudson in the early 1700s.
So here's a personal question. Why do you feel like we don't learn more about that, about Newark, the history, like with Lenape and stuff like that?
Because a lot of people believe that they don't exist anymore. They left, they were driven out, they're out in Oklahoma and different places. And it's true that many are, but we still have 3 state-recognized tribes here in New Jersey.
Can you say what those are? So don't be afraid to ask a follow-up question, right? You don't have to just stick to the questions that we came up with, but so can you talk a little bit about what those are? And yeah.
Yes. I'm a member of the Ramapo Lenape Nation, which is located in New Jersey and New York, because they basically are in the Ramapo Mountains. So they straddle both states. And we have the Nanticoke. They are down in South Jersey, down closer to the Cape May area. And the Powhatans, they have a reservation actually around Cocos Reservation. And that's in South Jersey also, but not as far as down as the Cape May.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So what is an important thing about Lenape history that you think all Norkers should know?
Well, I think it's important to know that Newark is one of the oldest cities, number one. And if you ever get a chance to go down to the Newark Library, you can see old drawings from colonial times that they keep there. And you get a sense of, where you stand. All farms around here. And actually Bloomfield Avenue, Central Avenue, Park Street, Park Avenue, all of those were Indian footpaths.
Wow. So, film was invented in Newark, right? So is there any
Yes.
footage of these Native Americans here? Like, since this
Probably not from colonial times.
Okay.
Right. But there are drawings.
Drawings, okay.
Right. There are drawings, yes.
So, who have the Lenape contributed to Newark history? How have the Lenape contributed to Newark history?
Well, here in Newark, a lot of people look at Robert Treat. We have Robert Treat Hotel, and there's an amazing painting. I don't know if it's still there, but there was an amazing painting of Robert Treat meeting the Indians on the banks of the Passaic River. And that's about as far as it goes. The history is not one that is considered important anymore, I think.
So how do you think people would benefit nowadays to know about the Lenape history?
I think because it's part of the history, not just of Newark, but of New Jersey.
Okay.
You see, so it's an important part of New Jersey history because Newark is the largest city in the state.
Oh, okay.
And so I do think that is an important thing to know about.
What about the Lenape community today?
Oh, today it's a pretty thriving community. They're fighting, though. I mean, it seems like Native Americans are always fighting. In terms of today, for example, there were chemicals that were dumped on where Native Americans live, where the Ramapopo live, and it was a big case going back to, let's say about maybe 2006-07, where at one time there was a huge Ford factory out there, and when they closed down, these chemicals were dumped, and it happened to be dumped on in the Native community, where many people have died from cancer, including children. And some of the houses actually, what complicated it, the whole thing was that some of the homes sunk into the ground. And then it was discovered that during the Revolutionary War, George Washington actually dug tunnels to hide ammunition there.
What are the important contributions and challenges facing the Lenape community today?
The challenges?
Yeah, the challenges.
The tribes here, they're state recognized, but many of them want to be federally recognized, which means it could help a lot of people. For example, it's not just the Lenape that we're concerned with. We're also concerned with the Cherokee Nation, the Echota in North Carolina, because, oh God, there's a lot of poverty there.
So how do you know if you're a descendant of that tribe? Because a lot of people claim that they're a descendant of a tribe, but not really have any actual factual evidence to prove that. How would you know that you're a descendant?
Well, when I was growing up, my dad used to take us, because my dad was the Indian. He used to take us up to the Ramapo Mountains, and there's a graveyard with all of our family name on it, going back to colonial times. And when I was a child, I didn't really understand the importance of that. But I found out that Rockland County Historical Society has my whole family's history documented there. And and I found out some very disturbing things. Like, for example, one of my father's direct descendant owned land there, was one of the first Indians to own his own property, and it was taken. He was tricked out of it, or it was taken from him by white settlers who wanted that land.
So is there any way you can tell that someone's a descendant? Like, is there any same type of thing you can look for, or is it just like we all look the same, but there's...
Right. Well, what we do, to be, my dad is our legacy, so that we know that we were connected, but we all have to fill out an ancestry chart.
Okay.
and then it's researched. But now there's Ancestry.com. There's a lot of ways to find out who you are, or who's in your background. And so that's basically it. But for 8 years, I served on the New Jersey State Commission on American Indian Affairs. And one of the things, this is just interesting points, one of the things that happens a lot is heads, just skulls, are found in different places all over the state. And so the question is, when anytime any human remains are found, everything stops and they call in a coroner. But these were dated about 1600, 1700, which means they bring them to the commission, because they're representatives from all three tribes there. And those heads are there because during colonial times there was a bounty on Indian heads. You got $7 for a man's head, $5 for a woman's head, and $3 for a child's head.
Wow.
And that was one way to, try to eliminate Indians so that settlers can move into those lands.
Wow.
So that when people get upset, that why do teams have to have an Indian head in the middle of the floor of their basketball court? A lot of times, especially the whites, they don't want to hear it. But it's upsetting to Native people because it's reminiscent of those times.
Yeah, well, it sounds traumatizing,
yes.
To be honest.
Yeah.
But,
And Lenape were not red. The red came from the blood. If you cut somebody's head off, they're going to be covered with blood. The Lenape people were my color, were people of color. And the reason why we know that is because in first contact, a lot of the ship, the crew, and the captain would write their impressions of the Native people. And if you see that, which is available at the Newark Historical Society, their descriptions, people of color.
So that's a good statement. So why do you feel that people who depict Native Americans always depict them as red? Why do you feel like people do that in the first place? Do you feel like it's racism? Do you feel like people should be informed of how they really look like? Or do you feel like it doesn't really matter what color they are, it's just the history that's important?
Right. I think that red thing comes from ignorance, right? Ignorance. So being on a commission, we had, we did get a number of schools, new schools that were being built to not name their schools after a Lenape, give them names or images that were offensive. But there are still 77 schools in New Jersey that refuse to change anything.
So how do you feel about the Redskins football team?
I think they should change their name.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's it. So that's all the questions.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Dr. De Freece?
Well, there were a lot of, you mentioned racism, and there's so much racism against Native Americans. And if you look at your $20 bill and you see the president there, he was the one who...
Andrew Jackson.
Yes, he was the one that ordered the extermination of Native people. And also my great-great-grandfather fought in the Civil War.
Wow.
Yes, and his widow, if you fought for this in any war, Revolutionary War, Civil War, your family's supposed to get a certain amount of money, right? Well, his wife didn't get her money. I don't think that she lived to see it, but the family didn't get the money they were owed until into the 20th century. Yeah.
Well, I know from my history that my ancestry also comes from Native American too, because my grandmother's side came from Oklahoma,
right?
And they moved over to New Jersey, later on through the South because of
yes.
So I want to know, how can you really tell, is it I know I asked this question already, the phenotype,
right, right?
How do you know where, what parts of the United States that these Native Americans came from,
Well, a lot of them have been removed and moved.
Right.
So if you go to Oklahoma, the Cherokee have an amazing reservation there. My father had gone there and to visit, and and some of them are doing pretty good, but overall they suffer. Wow. There's drug. As a matter of fact, one of my